Ladies and motherfucking gentlemen, welcome to the long-awaited final installment of my Iceberg Trilogy series, where today I'm proud to present to you the Jinchuriki Iceberg. So the Jinchuriki and the concept of bijou in general has not only been integral to the story, but it's also one of my favorite concepts in the Naruto lore. The problem is that other than Naruto, Gaara, and Bee, the rest of the Jinchuriki are all wasted characters. So I figured that the Jinchuriki and the bijou in general would make the perfect subject for the trilogy of my Iceberg series. This iceberg will contain both facts and trivia, but I'll also add in some theories and unanswered mysteries regarding the bijou and their vessels. The information that I'll be covering today will pertain to both the Tailed Beasts and the individual Jinchuriki, as I wanted to talk about the more minor ones here. Source material will be both the manga and the anime too, as some of the filler goes over the more obscure Jinchuriki. I'll also bring in some feeds from the Boruto timeline regarding the bijou, so spoilers ahead. Now, since this is the last of the trilogy, I invite that you guys grab your ramen bowls and unwind while we dive into the third of the Iceberg trilogy. We'll start off by covering the more basic information regarding the Jinchuriki, and the deeper we dive, the more obscure the information we'll get. The first is the surface level, starting off with the first caption, the history of the Tailed Beasts. Now, as we already know, the Tailed Beasts were created by the Sage of the Six Paths. The Sage used the creation of all things technique, an ability that allowed him to create form and breathe life into that form. The Sage essentially split the Ten Tails' enormous chakra into 9 separate entities, each with a differing number of tails and a different personality and abilities. After the Tailed Beasts were extracted from Hagoromo, he was left weakened, with only the husk of the 10 tails keeping him alive. Before the Sage died, he spoke to all the Tailed Beasts together, where he told them that they were all still linked despite being separate entities, and that someday was gonna come when they will become one again. At first, the Tailed Beasts were kept around 9 specialized temples built by the Sage and his followers to be cared for, but as the world became more embroiled in conflict and war, the Tailed Beasts were viewed as military assets, and humanity would fight for control over them. Eventually, human beings found out that bijou were at their most efficient when sealed away within special shinobi, and that's how the concept of Jinchuriki came to be. Bijou as sentient beings. The Tailed Beasts were created by the Sage of Six Paths as intelligent, sentient beings with names because he wanted them to cooperate with humans and live in harmony. That's why they weren't just mindless monsters like the Ten Tails. However, Hagoromo may have underestimated humanity's desire for conflict, and the Tailed Beasts would grow to loathe shinobi due to how they were viewed as just weapons of mass destruction. Hashirama was a compassionate man, and even he treated them like just weapons. Kurama would become the epitome of hatred against mankind. It wasn't until Naruto met the Four Tails that someone actually showed care towards the well-being of the Tailed Beast. And even Son Goku was so shocked that Naruto was interested in making friends with the bijou. It was so remarkable that Son told the Tailed Beasts to trust this boy and to give him some of their chakra. Bijou's special abilities. Like I mentioned earlier, every one of the Tailed Beasts possessed a unique ability or a Kekkei Genkai. Shukaku possessed the magnet-style Kekkei Genkai of Wind and Earth, which allowed it to manipulate sand, and it was this ability that inspired the sand manipulation jutsu of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Kazekage. Matatabi was known for its fire prowess, which is why it was called the Blazing Cat or the Wraith. Isubu was a proficient water-style user, but it also had the special ability of creating corals rapidly to cover any surface. Son Goku, the king of the Sage Monkeys, possessed the lava-style Kekkei Genkai of fire and earth. Kokoro had the boil-release Kekkei Genkai of fire and water, which allowed Han to push his chakra to the boiling point, and the furnace at the back of his armor released all the vapor, which amped both his speed and strength. Seiken, the Six Tails, could emit a corrosive substance in liquid or gas form that could disintegrate the target on contact. Chomei possessed insect-like features which gave it special abilities like creating a cocoon that slowed down chakra absorption. Gyuki had the squid-like ability of releasing ink to cloak itself in water. Kurama didn't have special ninjutsu like the rest of the tailed beasts, but it did possess the ability to sense out emotions or malice, which made Naruto pivotal in detecting the white Zetsu. Bijou power disparity. It's not exactly known how much chakra was given to each individual tailed beast. A logical rule of thumb to follow is the tail count, where the Bijou with the more tails have accumulated more chakra from the 10 tails. This rule makes sense when you consider that Kurama had by far the most chakra, and Gyuki had the second most. Kurama himself believed that the power correlated with the number of tails, but the 8 tails did object to that notion and said that this line of thinking is why Shukaku hated Kurama. So it might not be a definitive rule like that, but what we do know is that the chakra was distributed unevenly and that the 9 tails got a sizable chunk of all that power. So much that only half of Kurama could output the same amount of power as 5 Bijou combined. Animal inspiration behind each Bijou. Each one of the tailed beasts is based off animals, some real ones and some mythical ones from Japanese legend. The one-tailed is a tanuki or a raccoon dog, an animal prominent in Japanese folklore. The two tails was based on a Japanese supernatural cat entity, the kasha, which is why it was engulfed in flames. The 3 tails was just a turtle with a spiky crab-like shell. The 4 tails was just a red monkey or gorilla with tentacle-like tails and long fangs. The 5 tails was what happened when Kishimoto tried to mix a horse with a dolphin's head. The 6 tails is just a massive white slug with arms and tails. The 7 tails is based off of a rhinoceros beetle and its tails resemble the insect's wings. The 8 tails is based off of a mythical figure, the Uchi Oni, or the ox demon, since it had the bull's head with 2 arms and octopus tentacles. And finally, the 9 tails is also inspired off of folklore, the kitsune or fox spirit that possessed paranormal powers. There's actually a shape-shifting 9-tailed fox in Chinese mythology that transformed into beautiful women in order to seduce men, which could be seen as the inspiration behind Naruto's sexy jutsu. Ever since the concept of Jinchuriki was made, so were the specialized seals created to contain the Bijou within the vessel. The Uzumaki clan in particular excelled in sealing jutsu. Now, we don't know the exact name of the seal used on Kurama when it was inside of Kushina. It seemed to be a much more powerful seal than the latter one used with Naruto. However, there was a catch. Kushina had to remain inside the barrier for the seal to be effective. That wasn't the only limitation of the seal, it also got tremendously weakened when the vessel went through childbirth. Naruto on the other hand had the 8 trigram seal to suppress the 9 tails, which left this mark on its belly. This seal was manifested as a cage that kept Kurama imprisoned, with a sheet with the word seal written on the cage doors that kept the beast restrained. However, Kurama wasn't as restrained as when he was with Kushina. This seal was meant to be temporary as it was designed with the intention of allowing some of the 9-tailed chakra to seep into Naruto's chakra network, which would cause the seal itself to weaken tremendously over time. As a precaution, Minato embedded his chakra and programmed it to activate when Naruto undoes the seal. The only other Bijou seal we hear of is the Iron Armor seal, which was used to seal the 8-tailed within B, and it looked like a blue tattoo on his shoulder. Okay, now, we got to level 1, so let's take a dip into the iceberg. The Uzumaki and the Jinchuriki. The Uzumaki clan didn't only possess the powerful sealing techniques required to seal the beasts, they also possessed the bodies powerful enough to host such an entity. Members of the clan possessed an unrivaled life force and enormous reserves of chakra, which made them the perfect vessels. Mito Uzumaki in particular was an exceptional konoichi. After Hashirama's fight with Madara, Mito was sent to the battlefield to seal Kurama within herself. It is assumed that she used the same seal that would be used on Kushina later on. Speaking of Kushina, when Mito was in her final years, the Leaf Village sent out to the land of Eddies to find a suitable candidate to become the next vessel, and Kushina was selected and sent to the village due to her special chakra. Kushina was horrified when she found out, but Mito met the young girl and told her that love was the one way to take the 9 tails and overcome its hatred. Distribution of the bijou. The tailed beasts were at first kept in specialized temples created by the Sage of Six Paths to house and protect them, but as the years went and time evolved, the bijou were roaming around the world freely, wreaking havoc on the humanity that tried to enslave them for decades. The only tailed beast that remained sealed away in his temple was the Shukaku. Eventually, the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, would gather up the remaining tailed beasts, and he decided to distribute them amongst the newly established great nations, in an effort to get a ceasefire and prevent the war from exacerbating. Hashirama was going to give the tailed beasts for free, but his brother Tobirama, being the pragmatic one, said that they should be sold. Of course, the Leaf would keep the 9 tails, as its Jinchuriki was the Hokage's wife, and the Sand already possessed the 1 tail. We don't know exactly how the tailed beasts were distributed, and somehow the 7 tails ended up in the waterfall's possession. However, there is a theory I concocted that I will be tackling later in this video. The Akatsuki and the Bijou. The Akatsuki members that were recruited after Yahiko's death were all recruited with the idea of facing Jinchuriki or Bijou in mind. That's why they went only after the strongest. According to the Naruto databook, it was their leader's belief that when 2 members of the Akatsuki team up, even a tailed beast or Jinchuriki will have no chance against them. Now, the power of a Jinchuriki varies greatly depending on what tailed beast they possess or how much control they can exercise over the beast, but so did the Akatsuki vary in strength. Originally, every Akatsuki member had a quota of capturing a tailed beast, but there were some members like Itachi and Sasori that never filled out their quota. It's unknown whether Konan or Zetsu participated in the hunt for the Bijou. All we know is that Obito's exempt from this rule since it's applied to the original 10 members, which could mean that Orochimaru was tasked with the capture of a Jinchuriki. Now, who captured Han is an intriguing question, however, this is another point you'll have to catch later in this video. Jinchuriki transformations. The Jinchuriki have several forms that they can take on before they transform into their tailed beast. The first is called the Virgin One Cloak, in which a light layer of chakra covers the Jinchuriki's body. This amps all their abilities, and the chakra cloak can be manipulated to form extra appendages. This transformation, as strong as it is nothing compared to the next transformation, the one on the thumbnail of this video, the Virgin Two Cloak. It's described as tailed beast chakra being converted into a humanoid form. This chakra is a lot denser and more potent than the Virgin 1 chakra. The amount of energy being released out of entering this form alone was enough to create craters under the Jinchuriki. The Virgin 2 chakra also seemed to be corrosive and could act like a poison, as it would burn Naruto's skin whenever he transformed out of that form. But I think that may be unique to Kurama and its overwhelming hatred at the time, because B and the other Jinchuriki didn't suffer the same effects after transforming. This form is available to all Jinchuriki, and they all shared some abilities like manifesting the bones of their bijou or creating extendable chakra arms. The third transformation a Jinchuriki could go through is the partial transformation, where they bring out a portion of their tailed beast, like the tail for example. Okay, so I'll quickly revisit an old video I put out, the Perfect Jinchuriki Retcon. The idea is that Perfect Jinchuriki cannot be put under Genjutsu because their tailed beast partner can break them out by disturbing their chakra. But then the question became, how did Obito manage to keep Yagura under control for so long, since Yagura was touted as another perfect Jinchuriki, or at least one that possessed control over his tailed beast? Well, there's usually 2 paths that people go on when trying to explain this one. The first is that people will just denounce Yagura as a perfect Jinchuriki and say that Danzo had no idea what he was talking about. The truth is that we really don't know enough about Yagura to tell the nature of his relationship with Isubo, but the 4th Mizukage was renowned by many for his control over the Three Tails power, which couldn't have happened without some cooperation of the tailed beast. unless he just made Isobo submit completely. The second path is that Obito's just him and that his genjutsu's just that OP. He could have just put both Yagura and Isobo under his genjutsu. And if we look back at when Sasuke used genjutsu on B did fall for it at first, and Sasuke was negligent and forgot that his tailed beast was a sentient being that could snap him out of genjutsu. So if Obito were in Sasuke's position, it's more likely that he would have taken note of that and kept B trapped. Bijou reincarnation. Another interesting thing about tailed beasts that I wanted to touch on is that Bijou are essentially immortal deities that have been around for thousands of years, since the days of the sage. It's not to say that they can't be killed, but even when they're killed, the tailed beast is eventually reincarnated back to life. One example of this is the Three Tails that died alongside Rin when Kakashi ran her through with the Chidori. Years later, the Three Tails manifested back to life and was taken again by the mist to be sealed within Yagura, and after Yagura died when Tobi's genjutsu was undone, the Three Tails was brought back to life again in some lake. We do get to see this reincarnation cycle more explicitly with Kurama in the Boruto timeline. After he died within Naruto, 3 years later he was revived back in a much younger form inside of Himawari. Kurama deduced that this may have happened due to Himawari's unique heritage and how she already possessed some of the fox's chakra as the daughter of the former Jinchuriki. So this tells us that Bijou could be reincarnated within humans that they had a connection to. Let's dive to level 2, where the information covered will get relatively more obscure. Let's start with the Gaara Jinchuriki retcon. A lot of people believe that the concept of Jinchuriki was created much later on in the story, and that Gaara in particular wasn't initially meant to be a Jinchuriki. The Shukaku was portrayed at first as the ghostly spirit of a vengeful old priest that was sealed inside a tea kettle, and that's why he prevented Gaara from getting any sleep. Now, the Nine Tails was also presented as a spirit and natural disaster just like the Shukaku, but the Shukaku never had the same focus on his tail count, just like the fox spirit that everyone referred to as the Nine Tails. No one ever referred to it as the One Tail. That and the fact that Gaara never displayed the ability to activate the version 1 or version 2 cloaks makes him different from the other Jinchuriki. Now, while the last point is indicative of that, I think the old vengeful priest folklore can be explained with Shikaku's former Jinchuriki, who we'll cover later in this video. Jinchuriki are royalty. Now, despite the fact that they were treated like trash by the villagers due to harboring the fearsome tailed beast, in most of the cases, Jinchuriki are directly related to the ruling class of the village or the Kage. The Bijou were a prized possession in each village, so it was a tradition for the host to be selected from the Kage's family. Gaara was the 4th Kazekage's son and would go on to be the Kazekage himself. Yagura was chosen from pretty early on to become the Jinchuriki of the Three Tails, and it's likely he was being groomed for Mizukage, though the plan backfired for the mist pretty badly. The Four Tails makes a comparison between Roshi and Inoki, implying that the both of them knew the Tsuchikage pretty well, so that could indicate the connection between Roshi and Inoki. Fu, the Seven Tails Jinchuriki, also seemed pretty close to Chibuki, the leader of the waterfall village in the anime. Killer Bee wasn't directly related to the Raikage family, but he was one of the children selected for the Lariat tryouts to become the tag partner for the future 4th Raikage, and he was the only one to succeed. Now, as for the Nine Tails, every Jinchuriki it had was directly connected to the Hokage, with the first 2 being the Hokage's wife and the last being the 4th Hokage's son. Kurama's Yin half. The only way the 4th Hokage could stop the Demon Fox's rampage and also maintain the Bijou balance between the villages was to split the Nine Tails into 2 separate entities. Kushina was ready to take the fox with her to her death, but Mina didn't want to leave the village without its strongest weapon, so he called upon the Shinigami because that was the only way he could split such a powerful chakra in 2. Plus, the entire Kyuubi would have been too much to seal in this baby, but the child was half Uzumaki, so he'd get half the Nine Tails, the Yang half, while Minato would take the Yin half with him to the grave. This did not sit well with some fans, since half of Kurama was already stronger than 5 Bijou, so the full beast is just overkill. When Minato was revived in the 4th war, he was able to access the KCM with ease, because both halves of Kurama were linked despite the physical separation, and once Naruto tamed the Yang half, the Yin half was also tamed upon revival. It's kinda complicated, but basically, the Yin and Yang halves of Kurama are the same being split in two. They share the same personality and the same memories as well. When the Yang half was extracted by Madara, the Yin half was implanted by Obito to prevent Naruto from dying. The two halves finally merged when the war concluded. Baryon mode. Okay, now, I know a lot of you guys hate Boruto, and I understand that, but I figured that it would be interesting to tackle Kurama's final form. Baryon mode, which is strong enough to go toe-to-toe with someone allegedly stronger than Kaguya. Baryon mode is similar to the process of nuclear fusion, where Naruto and Kurama's chakra are consumed as raw materials to produce a new type of energy. It is by far the most powerful form that Naruto achieved, but it does come at a steep cost, as the more that Naruto fights in this form, the more that it will drain the user's strength and their lifespan. The catch is that the jutsu came at the cost of Kurama's life, not Naruto's. The jutsu basically depleted all of Kurama's chakra, and when he died, Naruto lost all of the Demon Fox's abilities. Interestingly enough, this was the one circumstance where the Bijou could be removed from the Jinchuriki's body without having a fatal effect on the vessel itself. Obito's connection to the Three Tails. When Tobi was laying down on the Three Tails as Deidara was dragging it away, a lot of people note that Tobi's change in attitude, how he wasn't being his silly over-the-top self as usual, was due to Obito's personal connection to Isubo. Now the scene did imply that he was sleeping, but for Obito to fall asleep during a mission retrieving a Bijou, it's kinda unprofessional. Well, you could say that the entire Tobi persona was pretty unprofessional, but Obito may have been in his feels due to how he was laying on the tailed beast that resulted in Rin's death. Rin impaled herself on Kakashi's Chidori after feeling the looming effect of the Three Tails sealed within her. So a lot of fans suspect that Obito was thinking of Rin, and this could be some subtle foreshadowing of his real identity. Though that would make it more of a setup than foreshadowing, since we didn't know how Rin died by then. Obito's connection to the Three Tails extends beyond that, as he also controlled its Jinchuriki, the Mizukage, for ages. And based on how Yagura considered himself a distinguished Mizukage, it's possible he never found out that he was being manipulated by Obito. Pseudo Jinchuriki. There have been some special cases where individuals possessed some of the Tailed Beast's power despite not being Jinchuriki. The first case that comes to mind is the Gold and Silver brothers. During the reign of the first Raikage, the Cloud sent a platoon to capture the Nine Tails, and Genkiku and Kinkaku were part of that squad. The Demon Fox swallowed them whole. However, the brothers didn't die and remained alive by munching on the Kyuubi's stomach lining for more than 2 weeks. They were so unruly, thrashing inside the Nine Tails' belly, that the beast vomited them out. And ever since then, they bore the Nine Tails chakra. It's believed they managed to pull this off due to being descendants of the sage. The brothers were able to enter both the Virgin 1 and Virgin 2 transformations. Genkaku and Kinkaku aren't the only case of pseudo Jinchuriki, as Sora from the Guardian Shinobi 12 arc from the anime was also a pseudo Jinchuriki due to his father collecting all the scattered Kyuubi chakra and aura left over from the attack, and then implanting all that chakra into his son. The Jinchuriki Psyche Plane. One interesting thing about Bijou is their ability to access astral planes of consciousness with their Jinchuriki. The Jinchuriki could visit their tailed beast in a manifested area where the Bijou resides, and depending on the seal, the Bijou could either be confined or not. However, the tailed beasts had another deeper plane of their subconscious that they could visit to communicate with other tailed beasts, that being the tailed beast psyche plane. This plane is only accessible to Jinchuriki once they become fully linked to their tailed beast. That's why Naruto entered the plane almost immediately once Kurama and him became fully linked. It was stated that the influences from the outside could never enter this plane, even if the tailed beasts were being controlled. This is where the tailed beasts gave Naruto a portion of their chakra. We get to see the Bijou all meet again in the Psyche plane during the Boruto timeline, meaning that the Bijou can connect with each other regardless of the distance between them. And that's likely what the sage meant when he said that the tailed beasts were all still linked. Level 3, and we're only diving deeper, so get ready for things to get more obscure. Let's talk about the Cloud's Jinchuriki. We already know quite a bit about B, but not that much about the other one, Yugito Ni. Yugito was said to have been made Jinchuriki of the Two Tails as just 2 years old. It was stated that B looked up to Yugito and that Yugito had gone through a similar training regiment as B, through which she learned how to transform into her tailed beast on command. The databook said that Yugito had mastery over her tailed beast. It's hard to tell for sure if she was a perfect Jinchuriki. The databook seems to imply so. Matatabi was also one of the more tame Bijou, so it's likely that she had a relatively harmonious relationship with Yugito. And considering that B and her were peers, could imply that Yugito was indeed a perfect Jinchuriki, so I may have been wrong in my assessment before. It's likely that Yugito had the cooperation of Matatabi and could use her powers to an extent, though B was still the more capable shinobi and possessed a stronger tailed beast. Utakata becoming a Jinchuriki. Not a lot is known about the six-tailed Jinchuriki Utakata in the manga, but the anime filler does give us an arc about him. It was shown that despite being a Jinchuriki, Utakata fled the blood mist after an incident he had with his master, Harusame. Harusame tried to extract the six tails from Utakata, believing that Saiken was endangering his life and not knowing that extracting it would have killed him. However, in order to prevent the extraction, Saiken manifested and killed the old man. Utakata was left with fragmented memories of that night, and he perceived the events as Harusame having implanted the tailed beast within him, cursing him with the life of a Jinchuriki. That's why Utakata got triggered whenever Hotaru tried to get him to be her master, as he had built up resentment towards his own master, someone Utakata believed broke his trust. However, the captain of the Mist's hunter-nin that were tracking him, Shirugi, told him that his master had nothing to do with him being a Jinchuriki and only tried to free him. Utakata realized his mistakes when he had time to reflect on his past, and he even goes to get permission from the hunter-nin to be able to travel with Hotaru as her master. However, Utakata gets ambushed by Pain and the rest is history. Menma Uzumaki. In the Road to Ninja Naruto the movie, when Naruto and Sakura are sent to an alternate reality by Toby, the main bad guy in that universe is Naruto's counterpart Menma Uzumaki. Menma had the black nine tails, and he had this technique where his 9 tails could split up into 9 separate tails, and then each tail could transform into a masked entity or animal, collectively named the 9 masked beasts. This Menma was engulfed in hatred, and that allowed him to bond with his 9 tails better, and he was able to enter tailed beast transformations instantly. What's interesting is that this same alternate dimension is revisited in the anime when Tenten gets trapped in the Infinite Tsukuyomi, and this time the Naruto counterpart is called Menma Namikaze. He has a different hairstyle than the other Menma. I don't know what the comparison between the two is, but Menma Namikaze was also able to enter tailed beast transformation immediately. He was kinda like if Naruto had more of a cold Minato-like attitude. Killer Bee Rapuden. Going back to the filler, we get to the famed Killer Bee Rapuden, the Power Rangers crossover in Shippuden. When Killer Bee is trapped inside the Infinite Tsukuyomi, he dreams of this joint mission to go rescue all the Jinchuriki in order to retrieve their stolen Bijou powers and prevent the resurrection of the Ten Tails. Each Jinchuriki is accompanied by a miniature version of their tailed beast. Killer Bee has to gather all the Jinchuriki before the full moon. Let's have Bee explain it to us.
The Princess of Rapu Castle sealed it away, but the Ten Tails will reach ultimate power on the night of the full moon. The Akatsuki will go to the castle and target the princess. Unless every Jinchuriki comes together, we won't have a chance against Ten Tails. And so the 9 of us have gotta protect the princess and her fortress, yeah!
Thanks, Bee. This filler was pretty fun for those that want to see more of the Jinchuriki, as they all participate in the 2 episodes. Blue Bee. So the previous Jinchuriki of the 8 Tails was a cloud shinobi named Fukai or Blue Bee. Despite somewhat being capable of keeping the 8 Tails at bay, he still wasn't compatible, and it was only a matter of time before the calamity. It's just that the life of a Jinchuriki was too overwhelming for Fukai. It meant constant isolation and scrutiny from all those around you, even if you are royalty. It's like there's a hole in your heart and the tailed beast constantly waits to pounce on that weakened heart. Fukai was selected because he had it all: skill, virtue, ancestry, but none of it mattered when it comes to Jinchuriki. What is necessary is having something that could fill that hole in the heart. Something that can keep you strong through all that hardship. Fukai failed to find that one thing, and he'd eventually lose control and rampage as the Eight Tails. Killer Bee faced the same hardships when he was young, but his spirit was very difficult to put down, and it's possible that his love for rap was the thing that Bee used to fill that hole. In the anime filler, it's explained that Orochimaru was somehow involved or even responsible for Blue Bee's rampage as the Eight Tails. Bunpaku. Remember how I said that Shikaku was initially said to be the spirit of an old vengeful monk? Well, these rumors arose due to the first Jinchuriki, Bunpaku. He was treated like any other Jinchuriki, feared and loathed by the villagers, so much so that he was kept jailed and under constant guard. The villagers didn't distinguish between the priest and the sand spirit. Despite all the ostracization, the monk didn't harbor any ill feelings towards the villagers or the beast itself. He was a wise and peaceful man. He told the Shukaku he believed that fundamentally people's hearts wish to connect with and accept each other, even with tailed beasts. Shukaku said that he'll never meet another human as understanding as Bunpaku, but that's where they disagreed. And the monk believed that there will be someone who will guide and save the Shukaku in the future. Okay, now, we finally reached the last layer. We at the depth of the iceberg now. Remember this theory I mentioned earlier regarding the bijou distribution? One thing that's never explained is how the waterfall village came in possession of the Seven Tails. Only the 5 great nations were present. In the anime, it was stated to be due to how the waterfall village produced powerful shinobi, but that still doesn't explain anything. Well, I got this theory I developed that would explain it all. Hashirama would have had to find a way to distribute the tailed beasts evenly amongst the 5 nations, and the only way to quantify them was the amount of tails. So he decided to give each village 9 tails worth. The leaf already had the fox, the Mizukage got the 3 tails and the 6 tails, and the Tsuchikage got the 4 tails and the 5 tails. Each is an aggregate of 9. Since the sand already had the 1 tail in their possession, the only way for everyone to have an even count was to give the Kazekage the 8 tails, and then the Raikage gets the 2 tails and the 7 tails. The Hokage's choice to keep the tailed beasts exclusively to the 5 great nations may have not sat well with everyone, especially not the elite of the village hidden in the waterfall, who went as far as sending an assassin after the Hokage, Kakuzu. Now Kakuzu obviously failed his mission, but Hashirama wasn't like most shinobi. He was so much stronger than everyone that he feared no village. And considering how forgiving he was, I believe that he may have handed the waterfall the 7 tails as acknowledgement for their strong shinobi, that being Kakuzu. To compensate for the cloud, he gave them the 8 tails instead, and as for the sand, the Kazekage didn't want a tailed beast to begin with. All he needed was arid land, so Hashirama could have helped him in that regard. Fu's capture theory. Fu, the Jinchuriki of the 7 Tails, is another Jinchuriki we don't get to see that much of in canon, but we do get to see her in the Chunin exams filler. Fu's personality is pretty similar to Naruto's, energetic and always looking to make a connection. It seemed like Fu was close to the village leader Chibuki, but I imagine the rest of the villagers treated her with contempt. All Jinchuriki dealt with that. Fu felt so isolated in her village that she secretly applied for the Chunin exams, and despite denying it at first, Shibuki reluctantly endorsed Fu to participate, and he sent along 2 Jonin as her guards. Chibuki was hoping that Fu wouldn't stick out, but since she acted like Naruto, she drew a lot of attention. This is where the theory part comes to play. Another village that sent participants to the Chunin exams was the Hidden Rain village. Pain wanted to gather intel on the Jinchuriki, and Conan sent out a bunch of genin, one of which was Ajise, who would eventually become the 2nd animal path. It's possible that Conan may have had her gather intel, and Ajise may have reported back on Fu, and then Conan would go on to communicate their location to Hidan and Kakuzu, who would stage an ambush against Fu and her 2 companions. Yagura and Yukimaru. So this one's interesting. In the 5th season of Shippuden, Naruto meets a boy named Yukimaru who's traveling with Kabuto. This boy is able to control the Three Tails somehow. When Kabuto gives him the pills, Yukimaru can summon the beast forward and he could briefly control Isobo's actions. This had led a lot of fans to believe that he's related to Yagura somehow. Their characters also shared the same colors, and considering how Kurama reincarnated inside Himawari, this means that Bijou can be related to Shinobi through lineage. By the time Yukimaru was introduced, Yagura was dead, so it's hard to determine how they may have been related. We know that Yagura may have looked young, but he was an adult, and that he fathered a child that would go on to father Kagura. So could Yukimaru be that child? All we know about Yukimaru is that his mother was killed by Guren, so we don't really know much, but their connection to the Three Tails is pretty interesting. 4 Tails and 5 Tails in the war. When the new Naruto Gaiden one-shot for the 4th Hokage came out, the World Within the Spiral, we got to see the 2 Jinchuriki of the stone deployed together against the Leaf's Team 6. They showed impressive control over their tailed beast's power. They're at least able to manifest their Bijou and fire off tailed beast bombs. It's likely that this duo was deployed often during the Great Ninja War, and that they were some of the heavy hitters of the Stone Village. Han was renowned for both his speed, as well as his team ninjutsu amplified by the 5 Tails. It's likely that he made his fame in this war. The same with Roshi, he became known for his lava style. After the war ended, both deserted their village, with Roshi leaving to better understand and control the power of his tailed beast, and Han choosing to live in a secluded forest away from the village. Han's capture. This is a topic that I already touched on in my first Iceberg video, the mystery of who captured Han or the 5 Tails. In the last video, I assumed that Han was targeted by some of the senior members of the Akatsuki, Konan and Obito, since the other members already had a target and Zetsu was unlikely to be tasked to hunt the Bijou. Plus, Han was one of the stronger Bijou, so they had to send their big guns. Another possibility I didn't consider was that it was a case similar to the 3 Tails, and that the 5 Tails was roaming freely after Han's death. The last time we knew Han was alive for sure was his encounter against Minato in the 3rd war. Roshi looked a lot younger back then, implying that this was a long time ago, so it is possible that he may have died and the Akatsuki just captured Kokuo, which would have been much easier. Naruto as Jinchuriki of all the Bijou. Remember the prophecy told to all the Bijou by the sage that I mentioned in the beginning? Eventually, there was gonna come a time where all the tailed beasts will be reunited again, each with a different form than before, and they will be led properly. This prophecy was realized first by the 4 Tails Son Goku, when Naruto showed a desire to understand and even befriend the tailed beast. After he talked to the other tailed beasts, they all agreed to give Naruto some of their chakra. Now Naruto had the chakra of all the Bijou from the 2 Tails to the 7 Tails, and the 9 Tails obviously. This chakra was pivotal in defeating Obito, because without that chakra he wouldn't have managed to pull them out of him. And when Obito reverts back and steals some of the 1 Tail and 8 Tails chakra from Madara, he implants those alongside the yin half of Kurama. So by this point Naruto has some of every tailed beast's chakra. This made Naruto the Jinchuriki of all the tailed beasts that Hagoromo prophesied long ago. And Naruto would remain as the meeting point for all the tailed beasts for years to come. Anyways, that's it for the trilogy. This has been one massive video, but the Jinchuriki didn't get enough attention from the author, and considering that their narrative was that they were all collectively loathed for harboring the tailed beasts that were meant to uphold balance and peace within the world, made me want to make this video to show some love for them. This has been the Iceberg Trilogy. If you haven't seen the previous installments already, then make sure to check out the Akatsuki Iceberg and the Uchiha Iceberg. But anyways, I've rambled for long enough. Peace out and have a great day, folks.